Ross Merriam, for game 1 here, is on a 4-card hand. Were it any other deck, I would say we're not going to get a game, but it's Dredge.
Right. Dredge and Tron. Those are the two where you wouldn't count them out just yet.
Gemstone Mine a start for Austin.
Was no turn 1 Faithless Looting, though. So kind of a big check for turn 2 Cathartic Reunion when you're this low on cards.
We will see Ancient Stirrings, and there is the Lotus Bloom I'm mentioning here, something you can find off that turn 1 Stirrings, and Austin will suspend it. As is frequently the case with Lotus Bloom decks, when they suspend it on turn 0, it's a bit of a signpost saying that they're expecting to combo on turn 4.
You don't play this card unless you are trying to actually win the game on the 4th turn.
Cathartic Reunion for Ross, turn 2. Well, that'll work for a 4-card hand. His first dredge will be Life from the Loam. Can he find another Dredger? He does not, so he gets Creeping Chill, drains for 3, and has to take 2 natural draws.
Did flip over a Faithless Looting, so he could potentially be flashing that back next turn.
Yeah, a bit of a miss, though. I think he would have liked to have seen that second Dredger, or at least a land to target with the Loam. He didn't find either.
Yeah. On a 4-card hand, I don't think this is enough to salvage. Especially with Robbins having this Lotus Bloom draw, it looks like he is going to have a good start to his game.
Yeah, Lotus Bloom making it so easy. Remember, Titan is trying to get up to 6 mana, so if doing it on turn 4, Austin doesn't even need additional acceleration. If he makes his land drops on turn 4, he'll have enough for Primeval Titan.
Right. He's even drawing another Ancient Stirrings here, though, so very high chance that he has access to some fancy lands.
Yeah, ideally he's going to find a bounce land. You see him getting Radiant Fountain.
I guess that's a fancy land, though it's not really the one that you want in this matchup.
Yeah, he would have liked a bounce land so he could pick up that Gemstone Mine.
A bounce land or a Bajuka Bog. Though he doesn't even need a bog just yet.
Yeah, there's not much to get rid of.
Yeah, Ross not doing much, and he's just naturally drawing Narcomoeba for turn here. Pretty weak stuff.
Well, it is castable.
That's true. Yes, that Gemstone Mine. I don't feel like the 1/1 flyer is going to get there against the 6/6 Trampler.
Conflagrate from Ross for 3, discarding Life from the Loam, Narcomoeba, Bloodghast. Robbins will go to 16. We'll see if Ross has a land to put that Bloodghast into play, and he does not.
He'll have access to kind of a funky line next turn. Well, he would have if Robbins wasn't playing this Bajuka Bog.
No, and Robbins naturally draws the Bajuka Bog, exiles away Ross's graveyard, and next turn we're set up for Primeval Titan from the Amulet player. And Ross spends his turn loaming back the Gemstone Mine and resetting it.
Yeah, so that's what I was kind of building up to, is that the Gemstone Mine would have to be sacrificed, then you can loam it back and you get the Bloodghast back kind of the hard way.
Well, it's not going to be Primeval Titan, but it will be Hive Mind from Austin Robbins, and a Summoner's Pact will clean it up. Game 1 goes over to Austin Robbins.
Now, Dredge is a deck that can pay for Summoner's Pact, but you have to have 4 lands.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it. On top of it, the Hive Mind Summer Bloom, or not Lotus Bloom versions of Amulet Titan are really flush on packs. They have the 4 Summoner's Pact, but they usually play multiple copies of Pact of Negation main just to make sure that Hive Mind can hit.
Right. And when it comes to paying for Pact of Negation, we've seen Dredge players, including Ross Merriam, struggle to cast Prized Amalgam, so that one's a little bit more difficult to pay for.
So despite a bit of hiccups for Austin, game 1 goes his way. Let's take a look at some sideboarding. On Austin's side, that game he had a good turn 4 kill. I would expect in a straight race on the draw, Austin can't reasonably be faster than turn 4. He may need to play a little bit of defense. We saw that with the Bajuka Bog. But other cards here can help him. He's got 2 Dismember, 2 Swan Song, 2 Kozilek's Return, and then 1-ofs in Reclamation Sage. That one is actually just out of the board. He does not have a copy in the main. A Hornet Queen, a Slaughter Pact, an Ancient Grudge, a Walking Ballista, which also, that is the 1 copy. No, that one's not in the main in this build either. Mm-hmm. Ghost Quarter, Nature's Claim, Obstinate Baloth, and Tormod's Crypt.
So that last one there, the Tormod's Crypt, that's the big find, adding more graveyard hate that you have high access to by virtue of Talaria West and Ancient Stirrings. That one's quite powerful. You could go for some of this other stuff like Kozilek's Return to slow the Dredge player down. You do see Fire Spout in a lot of these spots, and that one's different as it does hit prized amalgams. The return's a little bit weaker. It can be good for some time, though it's not the most impactful effect. If this were the more traditional Amulet Titan deck, where you were just on Primeval Titans to win the game, I'd be inclined to reach for the Hornet Queen. Given that he's on Hive Mind, he already has a bunch of big payoffs. I don't know that you necessarily need that.
Yeah, that'd be my thought as well. And the Kozilek's Return part's interesting. He's paying a cost for registering it. The reason you want to play Fire Spout is for matchups like this, where you need the third point of damage. Now, the nice part about Kozilek's Return is in matchups where 2 damage is about the same as 3, so something like Humans, you can find this off Ancient Stirrings, so 2 copies plays like 3 or 4. But here, you're right, that because it's not Fire Spout, I don't think it'll do enough.
Yeah, it definitely beats up on Affinity. That much is true, but it's kind of whatever here.
How do you feel about Swan Song? He's going to be on the draw. He could catch a Cathartic Reunion, perhaps, with it, or a large Conflagrate. I don't know if any of that particularly matters.
Yeah, that seems fine. It's kind of the thing where when you play a deck like Amulet Titan, you usually have 1 or 2 of your utility lands in your main deck that aren't very good in the matchup. Though against Dredge, that's the matchup where your Bog really plays. That tends to be your weakest one. You're not looking at sideboarding too many cards. Swan Song seems fine.
Interestingly, because Austin is trying to be a bit more proactive here with the Hive Minds, a lot of those some of the utility one-ofs you talked about, he actually doesn't have here. So cards like Cavern of Souls, something you normally see out of this deck, Austin doesn't have any.
Sure.
The Ghost Quarter is in the sideboard, not the main. These are the ones that you oftentimes see them reaching to cut. What he has done is he's playing some of the faster one-ofs. So he's got a copy of Temple of Mystery as a one-of. That's the blue-green Scry land from Theros. He also has Crumbling Vestige. It's an additional mana maker that with Amulet makes 2. These are cards that give you less defense in matchups, but they do help you go faster.
Yeah, and what you're describing there kind of demonstrates less flexibility in sideboarding.
Yes.
Robbins doesn't have that luxury of boarding out extra utility lands that the other builds of Amulet Titan do.
On Ross Merriam's side, Leyline of the Void, 4 of. 3 Lightning Axe, 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Nature's Claim, 2 Assassin's Trophy, an Ancient Grudge, and then a Ghost Quarter of his own.
So the 2 Thoughtseize seem great here.
Yeah.
You hope for a hand that's light on payoffs or maybe light on enablers, break it up wherever it's weak. And then you probably want to reach for 1 or 2 Assassin's Trophy. You've seen Hive Mind, it's Primeval Titan deck. It's kind of mopey, but it's sort of a latch-ditch effort.
Well, if you're trying to hit a 6-mana card with it, I would almost as soon leave it in the board, but I like Assassin's Trophy because I actually would like to hit a bounce land with it.
Yeah, hitting a bounce land can be a big deal. There's also going to be times where hitting an Amulet could be a game changer as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are draws where you can do that. I think they're really fast Amulet draws. So if it's a slow Amulet draw, you probably don't want to give them the extra land. Austin, it looks like, has, just 2 basic forests, so maybe you don't give them a land. The bounce land part is the real big one. I mean, if you hit with a bounce land on the stack, you Assassin's Trophy it, they lose the land. Yeah, they get a basic, but then they have to resolve the bounce land trigger and they have to pick up the basic. It's pretty brutal.
Right. The game still revolves way more about Robin's ability to exile the graveyard.
Yes.
That kind of disruption, it can amount to something, but it's not going to be the main focal point of the game.
In this matchup, a simple start out of Austin, I was going to say, he doesn't have Sakura Tribe Scout in his list because he's a Lotus Bloom build, and that actually does make the Bazooka Bug significantly weaker in this matchup. One thing that you can see out of a Tribe Scout deck is something like turn 1 Tribe. If you just have an opener of a turn 1 Tribe Scout, a Bazooka Bog, and some bounce lands, it's really hard for Dredge to beat that because they just instant speed put in the Bog, and then on main phase they play the bounce land, pick up the Bog, and they just do it again and again.
The Tribe Scout gives you an extra land every turn, so you can actually pick up and produce lands.
And it gives it to you at instant speed, which against Dredge is very nice.
Right.
His deck, Austin still has the Bog and can recast it, but he'll likely only get, on his way up to chaining up to 6 mana, he'll likely only get 1 Bog trigger as opposed to a Tribe Scout deck that might get 2 or 3.
If he's not tightening up those extra lands, he's taking his land drop off that turn, so he can't just reset the Bog.
Right. The only card in his deck that gives him additional land drops. He has 3 Azusa. That's it. He has no Stripe Scout, no Explore. So he's mostly on 1 land a turn. We'll see that bridging to 6 be done by Lotus Bloom more often than not.
Right. When it comes to that play you're talking about Assassin's Trophy and a bounce land, that makes me feel a little bit better about the Jund matchup.
Yeah.
Against a deck like Amulet Titan.
Yeah, Jund is probably still a good matchup for Amulet Titan, but it lost, percentage-wise, Assassin's Trophy probably cost Amulet 2% in the matchup.
Yeah, it's a swing.
Yeah. And you'll see that with these fair decks. Field of Ruin probably cost you 2% in the Jeskai matchup, and those things, they just add up over time.
Right. So Ross on the play, more than 4 cards this time.
Yeah. Austin did take a mulligan to 6, but Ross had a full 7. And we will see Shriekhorn from Ross Merriam. Crumbling Vestige from Robbins. Making Ancient Stirrings. This one from Battle for Zendikar. Enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for colorless, but the turn you play it, you may get 1 mana of any color, which he chose to have be green. Cast Ancient Stirrings, and now a Lotus Bloom on turn 1 again. Ross will Shriekhorn twice, but does not find a Dredger, so it's a natural draw here. He milled into a Conflagrate and a Bloodghast.
Yeah, could do worse than that, but you can definitely do a lot better. Does have a Faithless Looting at the ready. You would prefer to start dredging with these draws.
Faithless Looting draws Prized Amalgam, draws another Shriekhorn.
Right, that's a good setup because he already has the Bloodghast, so discarding the Amalgam, that's going to accelerate him.
Yeah. Looks like Amalgam Bloodghast is what he's reaching to put in the graveyard.
As long as he has a second land, that'll get him on the table.
I don't know that he does. Actually, check that. We have a Wooded Foothills.
All right, so that's a pretty good start then.
Amalgam Bloodghast. Foothills gets back 2 Bloodghasts, the Amalgam delay trigger. This looks like it's going to be fast enough to race a turn 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no access to Dredgers just yet, but just putting 7 power on the table is pretty good.
Yeah, he may not need another Dredger here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a setup that it looks a lot more like the amount of power that something like a Hollow One deck would put on the table, but that deck's definitely capable of closing the game on turn 4.
That one an interesting matchup, yeah, especially on the Amulet side. I know when I play the matchup, the thought is when you make a Primeval Titan, you usually win. So you try to, the question is, can you make a Titan before you lose? It's pretty much a straight race.
Yeah.
Another Shriekhorn for Ross. He's going to immediately try to mill it, see if he can't find a little more pressure. He doesn't.
An additional Amalgam would be ideal because this first one comes back, then you have a delayed trigger on the second, and it would come back on Robin's turn, and it would be able to attack on your next turn.
Yeah. He does find Golgari Thug, so he'll have a Dredger.
That is a big deal. Did not previously have anything to dredge with, so you can start looking for Creeping Chills with that.
Amulet of Vigor from Austin Robbins. A lot of mana. And he may need it. If he can't survive until turn 4, that Lotus Bloom isn't going to play. Amulet may help him out.
This is a kind of an amusing dimension of the deck where when you're just getting this 6 mana, drawing both Amulet and Lotus Bloom, like either the Amulet is pairing with bounce lands and would get you there, or your Lotus Bloom is going to get you there by itself.
Yeah, just Gemstone Mine, Dredge of 4 from Ross. No action, but 2 more Dredgers. And now into main phase we go. Austin's still at a healthy 20. So you figure Ross has 2 attacks, and it's gonna be for 7 this turn. He needs to up it next turn to 13. Mills over a Prized Amalgam. And a Narcomoeba. That's 4 more damage for next turn. He is pretty close here. If there's a Conflagrate in the yard, he should have enough damage to win next
Right,
turn.
and he does. That was one of the first things he put in there.
Ooh, maybe a lot more. Cathartic Reunion from Merriam. First dredge will be Stinkweed Imp. Here's 5 cards. It's another prized amalgam. Second dredge is going to be another Stinkweed Imp. Narcomoeba. 2 Narcomoebas and an Ancient Grudge are in there.
Okay. This is actually an interesting dimension of the matchup when you look at the Lotus Bloom version of Amulet Titan. When it comes to a deck like Ad Nauseam, which is where you typically see Lotus Bloom, you can't really Ancient Grudge their Lotus Bloom because their instant speed stuff is what they're casting off the Bloom. Because Robbins is playing a deck that's casting sorcery speed 6-mana spells, your Ancient Grudge on Lotus Bloom is actually very powerful.
And that third dredge from Ross's Life from the Loam, it was a dredge for 3 that hit 2 copies of Creeping Chill. So Austin already down to 14. Ross swinging for 7 will put Austin 2-7. More than enough damage to close this out next turn. Merriam will pass.
Yep. Pretty sizable battlefield here for Ross Merriam. Wouldn't mind my turns be looking like that. This is kind of the position where your deck either plays Anger of the Gods or it doesn't.
Yeah. Right, you need a sweeper of 3 here.
Right.
Even then, that's likely not enough.
Yeah, you still have to deal with the Conflagrates and potential Creeping Chills.
Yeah, if it was Fire Spout, I think that the Bloodghasts could just kill you.
Right.
And yeah, Austin cannot do anything, so we will head to a third game. Ross passing the test on being fast enough. Now, that was a situation where Austin died there with a Lotus Bloom on 1. If you give him the play, he'll get the Lotus Bloom in time.
Right. Now, maybe the Lotus Bloom gets Ancient Grudged.
Sure, sure.
But it would come off suspend.
Yeah, I do like that, the line you mentioned there with Ancient Grudge being able to help play defense against a Lotus Bloom.
Yeah, I'm so used to that being a losing proposition.
For Ross Merriam's been quite the weekend. 8-1 right now. Ross, 22 open top 8s, among the top players here on the tour, along with 4 open wins. He's been, when not playing Magic this weekend, has been all about the World Series, which means it's been a lot of baseball. Talked about how he's up until about 5 in the morning yesterday. His team won last night.
Did they do it in fewer than 18 innings?
They did it in 9 innings.
That's just half as much baseball.
It still went till about midnight.
Sure.
So,
But that's a reasonable time to get to bed for Magic tournaments. And he's been here before. One of those open wins is with Modern Dredge. It's just muscle memory at this point.
Yeah. Now, one thing that Ross Merriam also, if you haven't caught him over in our Versus Live series over on this channel, he's one of the pros that competes their live matches. It's basically a live look-in on play testing. Players playing the top decks of Standard, Modern, and Legacy. That is broadcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. on this very channel.
It's a great show. Tune in live. They'll field your questions during the broadcast. You get access to some of the game's greatest minds, and you're just hanging out. They're having fun playing games, learning the formats. Got to see a lot of cool Standard brews. Also dust off some of the lesser played Modern decks. Brad Nelson was playing Eldrazi Tron. Hadn't seen that one in a while.
I wish I could play against Eldrazi Tron more often. I play decks that are great against that.
Even when I was playing the decks that were the best of any decks I played against Eldrazi Tron, like Death Shadow was still like 50-50.
That's like your ceiling on the Eldrazi Tron matchup.
Yeah. I will say I played the Unified Modern GP in San Antonio, and I
that
played
was Affinity, right?
Affinity in that tournament.
That's good against
And
Eldrazi
there was a lot of
Tron.
Eldrazi Tron in that tournament, and anytime they let on the Tron land, it was a fist pump. It was like, yes, I
Yeah.
get to beat this deck. This is the best.
But stuff like Grixis Control, that's
Yes,
harder.
Not so good.
There are very few decks that feel threatened by the card Matter Reshaper, but Grixis Control is probably one of them.
Well, a big problem was your best draws in Grixis Control are the turn 2 Tassiger draws,
Yeah.
and then they just cast a Reality Smasher.
They're like, right? It's the same. Yeah. It's about the same amount of mana each of you tapped.
Yeah.
Like tap.
I worked way harder for my Tassiger, and I also am only playing. I can only control one Tassiger.
It's legendary.
They can control as many Reality Smashers as they draw.
Mine has haste and trample, and if you terminate it, it sucks.
Yeah. It's a bad scene.
That's why, Ryan, the trick is, what you do is you ignore all of Eldrazi-Tron's plays, and then you clock them for like 20 or for 30, or you do something stupid.
Sure.
There we go. Boom.
The combo-y decks that I play tend to be pretty soft at Chalice of the Void.
See, if you play, Amulet Titan...
Just play the Amulet on turn 1.
No, see, you play an Amulet on turn 1, and then all your cards either cost 6, or they're lands.
It's hard to Chalice for 6.
Yeah, if they Chalice you for 6, I mean... Well, you can cavern through it. We're still okay. But,
Yes. Not even a problem.
The savvy Eldrazi-Tron players drop their Chalice on 0, and then hope that instead of having the Titan, I only drew Pacts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a 50-50 gamble on their part, because sometimes they just have the 6 drop, but it is the right play.
That's one of the ways that Affinity could lose some games to Eldrazi-Tron as well. They just play Chalice on 0 if they're on the play.
And if you just are like, and your hand is Ornithopter, Memnite, Mox Opal.
If your hand is good, then Chalice on 0 is good against you.
I love,
Like, if your hand is bad, sometimes you just beat Chalice on 0.
So what I do is I play Chalice on 0, and I look at you and I say, I hope you don't have one of them medium hands.
Right.
Can't
And
beat those.
You're just like, Springleaf Drum, go. Arcbound Ravager, Signal Pest, go. And they're like, oh, man.
Plating your quip. Like, you just had it all. Vault Scourge 18.
Well, this hand is pretty slow, but I guess if you're going to mulligan.
I feel like that play got a lot weaker. Austin's looking at a lot more cards there. I don't think.
Yeah,
drew another 7. No.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's either shortcutting an Ancient Stirrings or mulliganing more.
With Hardened Scales Affinity, I feel like the Chalice and 0 play got a bit worse. That deck's much less into 0 mana cards.
But like, you also couldn't convince me to play that deck in a tournament.
Hardened Scales Affinity or Eldrazi-Tron?
Yes to both.
All right. It is interesting right now. There's not been a home for Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher as of late. I mean, there used to be a lot of decks that play these. We'd have Bant Eldrazi, Eldrazi-Tron, the Eldrazi Taxes deck. These are still decks that people sometimes play, but I think the most I see of Thought-Knot Seer right now is the sideboard of Tron decks.
It's been something that you talk about a lot with combo decks, where there's an issue where other decks are constantly getting upgrades, and your deck is not changing at all.
Your deck cares about Creature-Eldrazi. It's unlikely you're getting new cards.
And to an extent, Eldrazi-Tron also cares about powerful artifacts, but
Yes.
we just left an artifact block. We are now in a multicolor set. So we're getting cards like Assassin's Trophy, and we just got a card like Arclight Phoenix. So there's upgrades to different decks. Search for Escanta to Fairy Hero of Dominaria. There's been upgrades across a lot of other decks where Eldrazi-Tron's just stayed the same.
That is kind of how life of a combo player works. Your decks will eventually fall out of the meta because other people's decks get better and yours don't. Usually. Depends on what kind of combo. If your combo deck is a 26 creature-based combo deck with basic forest in it, right now it's like a good time to be a combo player.
Right.
Like Counters Company, not getting worse. They
Sure.
get a new card every set. But stuff like Amulet Titan, you see turn 1 Amulet from Austin. I mean, what kind of cards could they even print to make this deck significantly better?
Right.
It's like new lands, which probably won't be broken, and then different green 6-drops.
Yeah, new non-basic lands tend to have mana-related activated abilities instead of just ETB triggers.
Yeah, they're smarter about those right now. They're not going to print a better Azusa. There. That was Aether Hub turn 1 from Austin. Jacob Baugh making a short appearance over on the side there.
Don't see that one too much in Modern.
No, you can get into the really pedantic debate of Tendo Icebridge versus Aether Hub. I like to do that one.
If you have a really worn out, just beat to hell Tendo Icebridge, I think you play that one.
I'm in. I still have the correct. I think I have neither in my list right now.
Sure. There's that too.
Or Crumbling Vestige is another one in that debate. These all are the same card. Second Amulet was found by Austin. He plays Simic Growth Chamber and picks up the Aether Hub. That kind of suggests he has a second bounce land. With double Amulet, you wouldn't want to put your only bounce land on the table.
Yeah, you want to be able to pick that up, play it, and make 4 mana every turn.
Cast Ancient Stirrings, floating a blue. Well, he's able to drop that second Amulet, which means if he has a bounce land in his hand and a Titan, we are ready for the turn 3.
Yes, the deck is really humming here.
I think I mentioned before, those 2 Amulet hands. It's hard to go wrong with them. Here is Serum Visions from Robbins.
It's gotta feel bad when sometimes you cast Ancient Stirrings and other times you cast Serum Visions. One of those cards is dramatically more powerful than the other.
It's part of one of the first builds of Amulet. Kind of one of the mistakes we'd made while figuring out the deck. We were a 4 Serum Visions, 0 Ancient Stirrings deck. I'll tell you, it's a lot worse when you do that.
Well, you can't Stirrings into Primeval Titan, so
Yeah.
what's even the point?
Well, yeah, one of the first versions. I mean, it was actually more similar to this deck. The first version we played where it was a lot of Hive Minds and a lot of Primeval Titans, and it was all about these 6-mana combos. So our first thought was, well, we're trying to get Hive Mind and Primeval Titan. Why would I want Ancient Stirrings?
Right.
Like, I got to have that Serum Visions. It was coherent. It was like a reasonable plan. It just wasn't the right one.
Right. Stirrings is the kind of card that it showed up sometimes in your draft deck when it was printed.
Yeah, but that
sometimes.
Right, that wasn't a time, I think, because this was, 2013 when we first played this deck at the Pro Tour. It was not a time where anyone was really playing Ancient Stirrings in any of their decks. So
right.
The idea of why weren't you playing it, it's like, well, no one played it.
Yeah.
We as a community hadn't realized this was the best cantrip yet.
Yeah, it really didn't have a time in Standard, and it's only recently started to show up in Legacy as well.
Yeah, we are starting to see some in Legacy, too. In Modern, it's calmed down a little bit. Tron still plays 4, but that's about it. Amulet, other Stirrings decks are what? Amulet, Lantern,
Ironworks.
Ironworks.
That'd be
still
the
does.
most recent big one. Ross, he's doing some dredging. No Bloodghast, no Narcomoebas, no Prized Amalgams just yet, though.
He's not putting enough pressure on right now. I'd be concerned on his side. Here's that Aether Hub again for Austin. Here's Azusa, so he may play 2 additional lands. Gemstone Mine is a 4th land. Here's going to be an Amulet, and does he have Bounce Land Titan? No, he says go.
Yikes. It might be seeing a little what you're talking about, where he played his only bounce land there, and he could be out. It could also just be that he doesn't have the Titan.
Right. If his hand has a bounce land if he has another bounce land in his hand, that would make sense, and he's just saying I don't have the Titan. If he has a Titan in his hand and doesn't have another bounce land, then he is missequenced.
Right.
For Ross, a Dredge of Stinkweed Imp gets our first Creeping Chill, 3 damage upstairs. Because Austin is the packed version, Ross's life total is even less relevant than it would normally be in this matchup.
Right. Yeah, with the Primeval Titans, you can do quite a lot of damage, certainly if you have a few turns to do it. With Hive Mind, you just have a I win button.
With double Amulet Azusa, Austin, if he makes a Titan, does have a line that deals 20. It's Primeval Titan, because you may double trigger. It gets 2 Slayer Strongholds, becomes a 10-6. And then it can double strike, and it can deal 20. So if Ross goes over 20 here, he actually can buy himself an additional turn against Primeval Titan, but that won't help at all against Hive Mind.
Right. He also needs to do more than Creeping Chill. He's got to get some Bloodghast, Prized Amalgams, that sort of thing.
He for sure still needs to win. I think the question was, does the life gain at all matter off Creeping Chill? And the answer is a little.
Right.
Flashback of Faithless Looting for Ross Merriam. First dredge will be Stinkweed Imp. 5 cards. No finds other than additional dredgers. He has 2 more to go. Golgari Thug is the second. And Ross actually thinking about that again. Is he sure he wants to go Golgari Thug? Or is it Life from the Loam? And it's going to be Life from the Loam. Your thoughts here? He's dredging fewer.
Yeah, so it could be that he is missing. He does already have a land drop. The biggest thing that Life from the Loam does is allow you to have more cards in hand for Conflagrates.
Okay.
And he doesn't have any pressure on the battlefield, so it's possible what he's thinking is he needs 2 big Conflagrates to get out of this game.
These dredges have really missed. Now on Austin's side, Colony Garden will untap twice from 2 amulets. That's enough. That makes 6 mana. And here's Primeval Titan. There is a line for 20 in here, and as long as the pieces aren't in Austin's hand, this should be the game.
Yeah, and when it comes to a 1-card hand, pretty good odds that he has it all in his hand.
Yeah. Specifically, if the Boros Garrison or Slayer's Stronghold were in his hand, it would stop him from comboing immediately. Those are the only ones that are the Sunhome, if any of those 3 are in his hand.
If the Boros Garrison were in his hand, though, wouldn't it have been possible for him to play that as his land over the Colony Garden to set up? Would he have enough red and white if he did that?
Yeah, because he has extra land drops off the Azusa. He could just put it into play.
Right.
Make some extra mana, give haste that way. He wouldn't be able to do 20 because it wouldn't untap. But what he actually would be able to do is he'd be able to put it into play and then get Vesuva off the first Primeval Titan. The Vesuva would untap twice. He could give 10-6 that way, and we'd be good to go.
Looks like he's going on a more Titan plan.
Well, because he has this Azusa, he's actually, he's
got a lot of mana available.
He's styling at this point.
Right.
There are a lot of lines that are lethal. He's picking a particularly cool one.
A particularly lethal one, I guess.
So Simic Growth Chamber and Teleria West were the 2 lands he got. They untap twice, make 6 mana. Bounce the Teleria West, which he transmutes for Summoner's Pact. Now he's going to play Vesuva, copying Simic Growth Chamber. That'll bring up to 7 mana and pick up the Gemstone Mine. He's going to go ahead and cast Summoner's Pact. Still 7 mana floating at the moment. Find another Primeval Titan. Cast it. He's going to be down to 1. Now he gets the Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison. It's going to untap twice, so we can give both Titans +2/+0 in haste. So we have 8 from one, 8 from another, an attack from Azusa. We'll make it up to 17, and at this point, 1 copy of Sunhome should do it. As long as his Titan triggers work this way, one of them can get Sunhome, the other one can get Gruul Turf Celestia Sanctuary, so you get the white and red mana necessary to activate Sunhome, and that should be off to the races.
Right. Once you find the Boros Garrison, if you only have 1 Titan, it's a little more awkward, but easy to find the right mana with 2 Titans.
Exactly. And those are the 2 bounce lands, Gruul Turf for the red, Celestia Sanctuary for the white. That's what the first Titan got. And the second one, going to go ahead and get that double strike land, which is Sunhome. Give them both double strike.
And Bojuka Bog.
And Bogu. And that will be game and match. Austin Robbins improving to 9-1.
Really slow start for Merriam in the 3rd game. In general, though, whatever the build of Amulet Titan, it does seem to be a pretty rough go for Dredge. Ross Merriam will fall to 8-2. Austin Robbins 9-1.
So congratulations here.